run the sniper program was John Tomlinson, or we call him JT. And I remember JT because he was the class leader. He was the senior guy in the class. He was an E6, and JT is one of those guys. He was a good leader, but he's one of the reluctant kind of guys that really didn't like being in the limelight that much. But once he had pretty much resigned himself to the task, he just didn't have to say a whole lot because he just led by example, like Jack mentioned before. There's just that exemplary leadership. There's just guys naturally just got in line and followed him. But and JT was one of the, I would say, probably the best class leader we had. And I trained over 300 guys. Just an amazing individual. And I have a picture of JT, a couple different shots. And JT is one of the guys that went down in the helicopter crash. This is another picture of JT and his dog, Hawkeye. And this picture is something that you guys have probably all seen. It was shot at JT's funeral, and it's his dog Hawkeye. I mean, if that doesn't grab you, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what does. And we've had 2 helicopter crashes in Afghanistan since 9/11, and the SEAL community is relatively small. There's less than 2,000 active duty SEALs. Similar to Dan's community, it's a very the AVSOC community is even smaller than the SEALs. But those 2 crashes just really hit the community hard, and I have more than JT. Chris Campbell, Heath Robinson were other good friends of mine that were on that helicopter crash as well. But it just it's tough to take those losses. But to think about it, these guys died doing something. They all died doing what they love to do in life, and I guarantee you, to the man, would do it all over again and get on board that helicopter knowing that there was a good chance it would get shot down. And that to me just really speaks highly of who these guys were. I didn't show this earlier, but this was a great coin set that the SDV community, the SEAL Delivery Vehicle community, did for the guys that were on or lost their lives on the Operation Red Wing. They serialized these coins, but I still have the full set at home, and I keep it in my drawer, and just reminds me of these guys' sacrifice. The last guy I want to talk about was my best friend. Recently you guys have all seen in the news, and Glenn Doherty was one of my best friends, and I met Glenn at SEAL Team 3. We were new guys in our first platoon together, and actually got asked to go to sniper school, train together at sniper school, and really kind of bonded our friendship, I think. Jack, you've been through sniper school before, and you're in the SEALs, it's 3 months long, and you're living on top of this guy and putting all these high stress situations. And the funny stories that I remember, Glenn and I, when we went to sniper school together, we're completely opposites. I'm packing just the bare essentials, where I have my one-man tent. We're up at this range doing the shooting portion of sniper training, and we're living and camping out on the range, and I've got my one-man tent, everything laid out, itemized perfectly, and just taking exactly what I need, nothing more. And here's Glenn camped out next to me, and he went to Walmart and bought the 10-person family tent. He's got an extra wing off to the side, one coffee maker, a French press in case that goes down. He's getting up in the morning, and he's one of those guys that we had to be on the firing line at 6:30. Glenn would be up at like 4:45, making coffee, rocking out to some 80s music on his headphones, and then he would crank up these Coleman lanterns that he had and light the whole tent up. And I felt like I was getting this Sharon Noble effect. Next to him, it was like the whole thing, the side of my tent lit up. I'm trying to go get some shut eye, but he just a funny guy. We called him Bub. That was his nickname because he was always. I remember one of our platoon artists, this guy Brian, drew up all these caricatures of us, and there's Bub, and he's got like gear hanging off of him, and prepared for anything. But Glenn and I were great friends. We ended up finishing that deployment. We're both had a sniper overwatch on the USS Cole when it got attacked in Yemen. Within 8 hours, we were on the Cole. We set up a sniper overwatch, or not an overwatch, but a defensive perimeter with the special boat teams with the Mark Vs in the water. And we just remained close friends outside of the community, including, I worked the same gig that Bill was on. Glenn got me involved with a little bit of security contracting when I got out. But we just maintained our friendship outside of the Navy to include, many a crazy adventure. Glenn was just this larger-than-life person and a complete adventure hound. Like, he would brag that his whole thing was about recreating, and we all said he had like a PhD in recreation. But just wanted, like I said, all these individuals that touch our lives and service, you take something away from them as a positive, and Glenn definitely, I feel like many of the others, and Glenn especially, like that I'm a better person for having known Glenn, and he's just one of those individuals that everything that anyone ever has to say about this guy is positive. And like Dan and I were talking earlier, he's like the model Navy SEAL. And you look at these pictures, every picture I've ever seen at Glenn. This is a marlin fishing trip / surfing trip down to Mexico, and every picture this guy's in, he's got this huge smile on his face. That's another shot. And to go, similar to Dan's story about Axe, I remember going to Boston, and for those that don't know, Glenn and Ty died in Benghazi, Libya, rescuing State Department personnel. To go to Boston for his funeral and see the people of Massachusetts come out in just incredible numbers. I remember we went from the procession to the church where they had his service. It was about 5 miles, and the chills running up your spine when you see 5 miles of shoulder-to-shoulder American citizens paying their respects to a fallen hero was just amazing. I mean, kids let out of school, local police departments, the fire, all standing. We drive by fire stations, everyone's saluting just for 5 miles straight. Just to see that kind of patriotism come out among the American people really like gives me faith that there is I know that we live in one of the greatest countries on the planet, but when it's sometimes hard to get caught up in the bad parts, but to see that it was pretty amazing. And so Glenn obviously was, out of all my friends that I've lost since 9/11, probably touched me the deepest. And I think the hardest part I had, and I lost it, was telling my children who Uncle Glenn was no longer here, because him and I were both private pilots and we'd fly my kids and drag him from the back of the plane up front and sit him on Glenn's lap, and my 4-year-old son's fly in the airplane, and we just had a great time. But but the important thing again for me, and why I decided to write the book I'm writing now, Lost Heroes, and I give credit to my publisher Simon Schuster. When I put this proposal out, people are like, oh, we don't want to touch it. Like major publishers, even my own publisher at the time, they're like, well, it just seems like a real downer. And I'm like, well, you're not getting it. It's capturing this amazing person's life and all their stories and lessons learned that should not be forgotten and should be passed on to other people. I think that's the what I'm trying to capture in the book Lost Heroes, and in this show itself, is sharing these amazing stories. And look, this isn't a downer. These guys would not want us to sit here and feel sorry for ourselves, and they want their lives celebrated. And I think that's the big theme here, and why we're here today, is to make sure that their memory lives on, and we celebrate these guys' lives.
I mean, I think that's something that you've all so far have talked about, is the common thread is you've respected these people so much for how they conducted their job, how they lived their life. Brandon, you did an exemplary job of discussing, Glenn as a person and how you felt about him in your letter to him in the New York Times, which I have to admit, when I read, it started making me cry, and understanding who Glenn is as a person, you did a remarkable job with that. That had to be tough to write, but maybe cathartic at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Dan said earlier, for me, it's very therapeutic, and I wrote that letter on the plane back from Boston, and it just came out of me. So, and I'm glad I was able to share it, and the New York Times picked it up and published it, because other people have written me since and had the same reaction, and it's good. I mean, I'm glad that people are embracing these heroes, and like we were all talking earlier, you look at the current situation with the election cycle in November and what happened in Benghazi, and everyone wants to place blame, and I think I watched Glenn's sister Kate go on CNN, and they try to put her on the spot about the fact that their mother Barbara had spoken out in kind of anger, and Kate was like, look, yeah, my mother's upset and grieving. She lost her son, and of course she's going to be upset. But Kate put it best. She said, these heroes today, including Glenn and Ty, I mean, their lives should be celebrated, and it doesn't have to be political.
Right.
Being an American hero is, I mean, if it can't be nonpartisan, I don't know what can. And we should really be focusing on those 4 individuals in Libya that gave their lives defending the freedoms that everyone, including ourselves, enjoy today.
Well, heroes are part of history. When we go back, and you can reflect back in your school days, doesn't matter whether it's junior high school, we learn history. And history, a lot of history, was based on heroes for one reason or another. These folks that we've talked about are history. They're legacies. They are parts of what people in the future should know, so we don't make the same mistakes again. And that although their personal being isn't here, their spirits and what they did should live on. And as Brandon said, celebrate it.